Hola amigos, ¿qué tal? Stu here from Spain Speaks with an update video today, feedback video, go through some of the comments on yesterday's video, see what's been happening in the comments section. A fair bit of debate on yesterday's video, so we'll have a look at some of the main points that were raised there, especially about these travel problems that people are having at the moment trying to get back to Spain, and some of the documentation that people need is not really very clear. Now, as you can see, I'm back on the couch today for the first time in 2021. I hope everybody has had a fantastic start to the new year. A bit of a quiet start for the new year for me this year because you can't really do much at the moment. As I mentioned the other day, I would normally be in Portugal for the Christmas holidays, but this year, not a good time to be traveling to a country like Portugal, unfortunately, and hopefully we can all get this situation under control again so we can start crossing borders and going to places on holiday without having to worry about all of these rules, regulations, restrictions, curfews, and all of these other obstacles that we have in our way at the moment. Now, we're in a bit of a cold snap here in Madrid at the moment, and I think that's fairly common around other parts of Spain. Quite cold, getting down to around -2 or -3 at night, and the daytime temperatures are not getting up above 6. So better to stay indoors. Also not a good time to be having a cold snap because natural gas prices are increasing this year by up to 6%. So there's going to be some hefty gas bills arriving in coming months. And that's not the only thing that's going up this year. I think income tax is going up for certain people. I think fuel prices are also going up. I think I read the other day that fuel is going up around 7 cents a litre, so not good news there for car owners, and various other tax increases this year, of course, because the government was able to pass that budget, their ambitious budget, and of course they need lots of money to pay for this economic crisis that we're now in. Now, as far as the health crisis is concerned, not a lot of good news there either, unfortunately. I mentioned in yesterday's video that there's going to be more restrictions in various autonomous communities around the country. Obviously, in some places you can't increase restrictions because they're already quite high, but I think in the Madrid community, Andalusia, and in the autonomous community of Aragon, there are going to be increases to the restrictions. For example, in Madrid, they're going to lock down more health areas, so it's going to be difficult for people to go in and out of those particular areas. And I think in Andalusia, the main problem area at the moment is what they call the Campo de Gibraltar, that area down there in Cádiz, which surrounds the Rock of Gibraltar. Case numbers go up, more restrictions imposed. Now, a quick update on the government's vaccination plan. Apparently, it's got off to a bit of a slow start. Of course, having all of these holidays doesn't help, and in some autonomous communities the vaccination plan has fallen behind schedule. A little bit surprising considering that it only started about a week ago and it's already behind schedule, and the bad news for the vaccination plan is that it's possibly going to fall even further behind considering that we've got more public holidays coming up, the 6th of January, and of course we don't know if things will get back to normal after the 6th of January because, let's be honest, things in Spain are not going to get back to normal until around the 11th of January when kids go back to school and a lot of people go back to work after taking holidays over this long Christmas period. Now, there was a fair bit of feedback about the partygoers that attended that illegal rave in Barcelona. There was around 300 people, I think, attending this rave, and it took the police 40 hours to shut it down. Some people saying, why did it take the police so long? That's a question that's also being asked here in Spain. It's become a political debate between the various political parties in Catalonia, asking that same question. Why did the police take 40 hours to shut it down? I think their excuse is that they wanted people to leave of their own accord. People knew that the police were closing in, so they wanted them to get out before being told to do so. I think that's what the police are saying today. But of course, the question is, why wasn't it shut down in the first few hours rather than let it drag on for 40? A couple of people asked the question how it's possible to party for 40 hours straight. I don't know. I've never done it. Somebody said that they used to do that back in the day, maybe not 40 hours, but around 24 hours of solid partying, depending on how good the drugs were. And I suppose that's still the case nowadays. It depends how good those illegal substances are. And I'm sure that people take little cat naps here and there. They're not partying for 40 hours straight. I could be wrong, but parties like this have always been completely out of my league. And another one of the big talking points yesterday was how are these people going to pay the fines that they were given? Fines of up to 600,000 euros for the organisers and around 3,000 euro fines for the participants. Now, I don't know if the organisers are going to be able to pay that amount of money. I think 600,000 was the maximum amount that they can be fined, so I don't think they will be fined that amount in the end. 3,000 euros for the participants could also seem like a lot of money, but again, I think that's the maximum amount, and the fines are being handed out because people were breaking the rules and regulations that we have in place at the moment about people gathering, social distancing, the use of masks, breaking the curfews and other rules and regulations that we have in place as a result of the pandemic. Now, there was lots of debate in the comment section yesterday about food here in Spain. It all started because of paella, that famous dish here in Spain, which I don't particularly like, but it does seem to have become the most popular dish here in Spain, especially if you are in the Valencia region or Murcia or Alicante or one of those places down there on the Mediterranean coast where paella is quite popular. It's very popular in the tourist resorts. If you go to places like Benidorm, the majority of places down there on the shorefront offer paella, and that's fairly similar, I imagine, in other coastal destinations, trying to get tourists to come in and try this dish. And I said yesterday that one of my worst eating experiences here in Spain was eating one of those paellas down there in Benidorm. The paella was dry, didn't have much else in it except for rice, and it wasn't the cheapest meal I've had in Spain either. So I generally try to stay away from places like that and foods like that nowadays here in Spain. There's lots of tourist areas all over the country that are going to try and suck you in for a cheap paella, but in my opinion it should be one of the last things that you try on the menu. There's lots and lots of other great dishes, perhaps not as famous as paella, but they're most likely going to be a lot better quality and better value for money. But as I said, for some reason paella has become the most internationally recognized dish here in Spain. Even chefs like Jamie Oliver have had a crack at paella over the years. I think he received a fair bit of negative feedback for his paella because he tried to put things into it that people thought shouldn't go into a paella. I think he made the mistake of putting chorizo in his paella, and the SH1T really hit the fan here in Spain when he did that. Now, somebody also mentioned in a comment that I used the word coger in yesterday's video. I think I said something like voy a coger el coche. Now, I'm going to clarify this again. I think I pointed this out a couple of weeks ago, or somebody in the comment section pointed it out, that the word coger, C-O-G-E-R, has different meanings in different Spanish-speaking countries. Here in Spain, it means to catch or to take. For example, take the car, voy a coger el coche. But in some South American countries, for example, it means a completely different thing and is best to be avoided. But here in Spain, it is a very common verb, and you're going to hear it all the time. Cógeme el vaso, coge el coche, cógeme esto, cógeme lo otro. You are going to hear it a lot. So don't be afraid to use the verb coger. Again, C-O-G-E-R, here in Spain. And finally, a lot of news at the moment in the press about people having problems trying to return to Spain from the United Kingdom, of course, now that you are no longer in the European Union. There were various cases over the weekend of people getting stopped at the airport and being told that their travel documents are not valid, that they don't have the correct documentation to travel to Spain. Bit of confusion being created by ground staff at airports in the UK, not really knowing which documents are valid. And I think there's even been some cases of people who have arrived in Spain but are being sent back to the UK on the next returning flight. There's one article here in the newspaper Murcia today. I'll just read out what they say. People telling the newspaper about their own personal experiences. One person said here, 4 people turned away from Gatwick Airport yesterday, one of which is my daughter, who had a copy of the green residence document with her, but they wanted an original. She had proof of her schooling as she is a student, medical card, and plus her father in Spain on the phone, but they would not let her fly. Another person said here, I was bumped back to Heathrow from Barcelona. Green NIE card not acceptable for entry to Spain. Have had residencia for 15 years. And another person says here, have just arrived back from Luton, just 4 passengers on one flight. One person had been denied boarding as no residencia. So there we go, various stories coming to light of people who are having problems getting back into Spain, even with apparently the proper documentation. So I'm not really sure what's going on there, but obviously people are being overcautious when it comes to flights from the UK, obviously because of the pandemic and the confusion as to which documents you need. So hopefully this can be sorted out quickly and residents here in Spain allowed back into the country without any hassles. But a lot of problems like this are obviously going to arise given that people in the UK are no longer allowed to travel freely around Europe. But as I said yesterday, welcome to the club, living inside the European Union from a non European country can be a little bit complicated. I remember when I first came to Spain back in the early 90s, I had to have a visa. I had to go to the consulate there in London and pay for a visa to travel to Spain. It was a little bit complicated for Australians back then because I didn't need a visa to travel to Portugal, but I needed a visa to travel to Spain. So even though my flight went from London to Porto, when I crossed the border into Spain, I needed to show a visa and get it stamped. All of that changed when Portugal and Spain joined Schengen and those borders disappeared. Now, of course, there's no border controls between Portugal and Spain, between Spain and France because of that Schengen area. I was reading the other day on Facebook a couple of people saying that it's a shame that the UK is no longer in Schengen. I think that's not the case. I think the UK was never part of the Schengen agreement. I don't think Ireland is part of the Schengen agreement either. I think it's only countries that share borders in Europe, and of course Spain, Portugal, France are part of that Schengen agreement. I went back the other day and checked my first ever passport and had a look at some of the visas that I had got over the years. This is an example of one of the first visas I ever got for this country, and this green visa here was my first ever Schengen visa. Now, I don't think people in the UK are going to go back to getting visas in your passports before you come to Europe, but I think in the year 2022 people are going to have to get some type of online visa before they can come into the European Union or the Schengen area for that 90 days. So a bit more complicated now to travel to the European Union from the UK, but hey, that's Brexit for you. On that note, I'll start to wrap the video up. Questions and comments, please leave them in the section below. Debate the situation out as you normally do. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. I'll see you in the next one. Hasta luego.